All right, everyone. Jeremy off here with another episode of the Public Relations Declassified live stream. And what we're going to be talking about today is something that helps you to get featured in the media, but also helps you kind of across the board from a branding perspective, from a conversion perspective, from a partnership perspective, pretty much everything. And that is 3 clear signs that tell journalists you're an authority in your industry. Now, this is important because whether you're reaching out to journalists on your own or you have a publicist reaching out on your behalf, there's certain things that they need to see that tell them that you are an authority in your industry, somebody who is a legitimate expert that should be cited in the media. So one of the first things we're going to touch on here are reviews. Now, this is something that a lot of people kind of push off to the back burner. They kind of just leave it in a wait and see mode, right? They just kind of hope that people will post reviews on their own accord. And the reality is people just don't generally do that unless they're pissed. You know, the happy clients, the happy customers, they tend not to post reviews unless you specifically ask them to. So you need a framework for getting these reviews because they're not just going to materialize magically on their own. But this is important because it shows people the quality, the value of what you do. So what happens is when somebody looks you up online and they see no reviews, that calls your authority and your expertise and your value into question. So let's talk about some of the places that we are going to use these reviews. So the first and most obvious, of course, is any of your own channels. So your website, your social media, things like that. Now, of course, you could post these in text form. You can post them in video form. I personally love video because it brings more credibility, right? People can see another person's face and hear their words talking about their experience in working with you. But the ones that you post yourself are only going to carry so much weight. Now, when it comes to the video reviews, they carry a hell of a lot more weight than the text reviews because literally anyone can write a text review and attribute it to someone. One of the big mistakes I see here is people will say, this review is from Bob M. Well, who the fuck is Bob M, right? Nobody has any idea who that is. It could be a completely fake and made up person. And frankly, a lot of people do post fake reviews. So any text reviews that you post on any of your own channels are going to carry almost no weight. Video reviews that you post on your own channels will carry a fair amount of weight, but where you really get the impact is third-party platforms. So this could be your Google business profile, your Facebook business page, sites like Trustpilot or Yelp, things like that. And we actually did a segment a while back. I'll have to see if I can find that and add a link to that in the description here. But we did a segment a while back on a list of all of the review platforms so that you guys can focus on, getting into all of them. But the most important ones are going to be Google and Facebook because that's where most people already are. And this is important because it is a third-party platform that you have no control over. People can post positive reviews, people can post negative reviews, and you have no control over what shows up. So it's something that you cannot manipulate, and that's why it carries so much weight. So we definitely want to post our reviews on our own channels, but more importantly, we want to make sure that people are posting them on these third-party platforms because that's going to carry a lot more weight. Now, there are some criteria that really matter when it comes to these reviews. One of them, of course, is quantity. The more reviews you have, the better it looks. If you've got 2, 3, 4, 5 reviews, that doesn't really say much for you. If you've got over 100 reviews or thousands of reviews, that says a lot about you and the value that you bring because there's a tremendous number of people who are validating what you're saying about yourself. Another important factor is recency. So if the last time you had a review posted for you was a year ago, that doesn't look very good. But if you've got a constant stream of new reviews constantly being posted, that says a lot about you. It says, A, that you're continuing to bring value to the people you're working with, but it also says that you're doing a lot of business, because in order to get a lot of reviews, you have to do a lot of business. So the more recent we have, the better. And, this is something I've been very diligent about for a while. And like, we've got new reviews coming in, usually at least every few days, if not a few every day. So you want to get them more frequently. And a good way to do that is just make sure you're asking people, when you've worked with somebody, ask them to go post a review and make it easy, right? Give them a link directly to your Google business profile, a link directly to your Facebook page, and a link to whatever other platforms. Now, don't go and drop them a list of like 60 different places that you want them to post a review, because as that meme says, ain't nobody got time for that. But pick the ones that are going to have the most impact. And for me, I always just lean on Google and Facebook. I don't really worry about the other platforms because frankly, most people aren't looking at them. But depending on what industry you're in, some other platforms may be important. So you just have to pick, I would say generally pick 2 to 3 platforms max, and just lean heavy into those. And it's worth noting, there's nothing stopping you. Let's say they go and they post a great review for you on Google and Facebook, and then you continue working with them. A month, 2 months, 3 months down the road, you can always ask them for another review on another platform somewhere else. And they can even use the same one they've already posted on Google. They can just copy and paste it and go put it over there. Often you'll find that these other platforms, Trustpilot, Yelp, whatever, a lot of these other places, a lot of people won't necessarily have an account there already. Everyone has an account on Google or Facebook for the most part. So I will tell you that your success rate in terms of getting someone to actually post a review is going to be significantly lower with these other platforms, because a lot of people won't really be interested in creating a new account somewhere else that they don't really use just to post a review. So you should expect that your conversion rate on getting these reviews on other platforms will generally be lower when it comes to these other platforms versus, something like Facebook or Google. And then the content of the reviews play a huge role. So stars versus an actual written review is a big one. If they're just posting, a 5-star review, look, that's great, but it doesn't carry nearly the same weight as if they're talking about the experience itself. So what you want to do is give people some guidance, some framework as to how to write the review for you. You don't want to write it for them for a lot of reasons. One, it's kind of disingenuous. 2, you're going to say things in a certain way, whereas a client would say things in a very different way. So what I like to do is I like to give them some bullet points, some things that I want them to touch on, and then just let them use their own words to describe that. But you want them to talk about their experience in working with you, right? Were you very responsive? Were you very fast? Were you comprehensive? Did you identify things that other people haven't? Like all of the things that really separate you, you want to make sure that they're talking about that. And then most importantly, you want them to talk about the outcome. So in my case, when somebody posts a review for me, I want them to talk about, how we make it easy for them. I want them to talk about how we take all the work off of them, basically just tee them up to where all they have to do is show up and be the expert, and we handle everything else behind the scenes. But most importantly, I want them to talk about the outcomes. I want them to talk about the media features that we've earned for them. I want them to talk about how that's increased their business, how that's allowed them to generate new partnerships, new affiliate relationships, things like that. When you can describe what the experience was like and what they actually ended up getting out of it, then that makes for a very powerful review. All right. So reviews are one of the 3 clear signs that tell journalists that you're an authority in your industry. Another one is your content. Now, when I talk about content, what are we talking about here? Well, this is any of the content, text, video, audio, whatever it is. And we want to create content in the form of tutorials, right? You're going to walk somebody through how to do a particular thing in your industry. Analysis, right? What's going on? How does it affect people? What is the long-term impact of this particular topic? We want to talk about predictions. Where do you see the industry going? What new legislation or regulations may be coming out? What's the future of the industry? Is it going to be growing? Is it going to be contracting? And then we want to talk about news as well. What is happening in your industry? What's new? What's breaking? What's being created? What challenges are people having? Right? All of these types of content demonstrate your expertise because you're showing people what you know in this content. So when a journalist looks at this, they can get a pretty good sense pretty quickly as to your level of expertise, and that plays a huge role in whether or not they end up featuring you. So where are we going to put this? Well, your website is step one, right? If you publish an article, you definitely want to publish it on your website. You also want to put your content on social media. Now, this could be, again, text content, video content, whatever. Regularly share this stuff on social media. And in some cases, it may be, we talked about articles a second ago. So maybe you've got some articles on your website, but then, of course, you can post a link to that on social media, but you could also take smaller nuggets from that and share them. You can also take other topics and just, create little short pieces of content, whether it's text or video. Anytime you're on stage, you're up here giving a presentation, that gives you video content in most cases, because most big events that are worthwhile have AV teams that are recording everything. So you're up there giving a presentation, you're sharing your knowledge, that's hitting from that angle, but you've also got the authority aspect, because when it comes to an event, they're not putting everyone in the world on stage. There's only a handful of people. So if you're there, it's because you were selected. You are somebody who stands out in your industry. So just simply being on stage is a huge signal to journalists that you are an authority in your industry. Books are another great one. Books take a fair amount of time to write. Most people can't even read a full book these days, but even fewer people can write a book. It's a significant undertaking. So by having a book that is published and available somewhere, particularly Amazon, that says a lot about your authority status, because it means that you know enough to write a good book about your industry, but it also says that you've got the discipline to follow through on creating something like this. And that's huge. But something I want to point out here is just having a book is not really enough these days. It's not hard, in my opinion, to create a book and put it up there, especially with AI these days, right? And you absolutely should not be using AI when it comes to writing books, by the way. I think most people can see AI content, spot it pretty quickly. So that's not going to help your credibility. But the bigger thing here is you want to have a lot of positive reviews about your book. So if you've got a book and it's got no reviews, it doesn't do a lot for your authority status. But let's say you've got 20, 30, 50, 100, or thousands even of reviews, then that says a lot about you. It says that people read this. It says that they found value in it. I mean, think about everything that's going on in our lives. If you are going to take time out of your day to read a book, that says a lot about the author and the material that's in that book. And then if you further take the time to post a review about it on Amazon, that says even more. So it's important to have a lot of positive reviews for your book, not just get it up there and call it done, right? That's huge. That's a critical factor. And then, of course, podcasts. So you want to have your own podcast. This is another form of content, and typically it's long form content. So it gives you a chance to really demonstrate your expertise because you can go deep on a topic. But more importantly, you want to get on other podcasts. And bigger is not always better. I do like to try and get on the biggest ones possible, or try and put our clients on the biggest ones possible. But that's not always the only factor, right? We want to look at the alignment. What does their audience look like? Are they the right people for you to get in front of? Does the podcast show up high in search results? Those are important factors, because if a journalist goes and looks you up and they find that you're on a whole bunch of podcasts, it means that you're authoritative enough that other people wanted to take time out of their day to bring you on and ask for your insight on a topic. And that tells the journalist a lot about who you are and the expertise that you bring to the table. So lean heavy into the podcast side of things. Okay. And the last of our three things that tell journalists you're an authority in your industry is third-party validation. So we talked a little bit earlier about social media and creating content there, but there is another aspect of social media that tells a journalist whether you're authoritative or not. And followers is the first metric. Now, this is not an end-all be-all KPI, so to speak. Just having a massive follower count doesn't really mean a lot on its own, because literally anyone can go buy a shitload of followers. They're just essentially accounts that exist, but they're not really doing anything. There's not real people behind them. They exist as a bot farm, essentially. So that then segues into the next aspect of this, which is engagement. If you have 100,000 followers, 1 million followers, whatever the number happens to be, but nobody's engaging with your content, that makes it look like you probably bought all those followers. And it also makes it look like your content doesn't resonate with anyone, that it's not valuable. People don't find it useful. If they did, they would be liking it. They would be sharing it. They would be commenting on it. So we want to make sure that we're getting plenty of engagement. And if we're not, then we need to look at what our content, how our content is structured, what kind of content we're creating, and adapt it to get more people to engage. And then a little bit more around the edges, a little bit harder to track, a little bit harder to influence is public sentiment. So if somebody searches for you on social media, they go and search your name on Facebook or X or YouTube, whatever. What are other people saying about you? And that won't necessarily show up in your engagement. That's just what other people are saying about you. That plays a big role, because if a lot of other people are talking about you, then that means you're probably, I guess there's a good case and a bad case. Either they think your content is great and they're talking about it and talking about why other people should pay attention to the content, or in some cases they may think you're an idiot and they're talking about that. Obviously, we want to avoid the latter, but in some cases, I don't worry too much about that, because it's still publicity. It's still driving people to you, and it does help to drive not only the negative people, but also the people who may find what you're saying valuable to you. So public sentiment is huge. Media features are another big factor here. Now, there's a little bit of a chicken and egg scenario, because if you're just getting started, you don't have media features, which of course media features would tell journalists that you are credible, because other journalists have already vetted you and included you in articles or TV segments or things of that nature. But if you don't have any existing media features, then you can go to kind of a lower tier, which is blogs, specifically within your industry, trade publications, and podcasts. Now, I do want to include an important caveat here, and that is that you want these to be organic, right? You don't want to go like there's a guy I know who buys all these cheesy blog posts where he pays a fee to go be included in top 10 XYZ type of companies, right? I'm not going to say who he is or what industry he's in, but this particular guy that I'm talking about has gone out and bought blog posts on a number of industry blogs, basically including him in a list of 10 other companies, and they're citing them as the 10 best in the industry. And look, most people know that these posts are bullshit, especially journalists. So that's not going to help you. That's not organic. That's clearly manipulated content. So that doesn't help. Ideally, what you want to do is you want to be contributing articles there, but lesser effect will be, having them cite you, sharing your insight, right? If you're contributing an article, the whole article is from you. It's all your insight. If you're being cited, it's a few quotes from you on a particular topic. Both can be valuable, but the ones that you write, if you have that opportunity, can be far more valuable, because not only do you get that content, but now you also have an author page on that particular website. And that tends to rank well in search. So if you have an opportunity to pitch some of these blogs, pitch some of these trade pubs, get on some of these podcasts, those will show up in the search results, and they will demonstrate authority status if a journalist looks you up. Awards can be another great one. You've got Inc. 5000. You had, who was it? It was Inc. that had the Power Players Award. That was something we won a few years ago, right? And basically, they go through and, whoever can be nominated, and then basically the people that run that particular award will reach out to some of that company's clients and get insight from them. And then, they judge based on that insight, what other people are saying. So if you have an award like that, that does a lot to really boost your credibility. White papers and case studies can be valuable as well. And ideally, you want to be able to publish these somewhere else, not your own website. I mean, you certainly can publish them on your website, but you would like the original source where they're published to be something more authoritative. Maybe a research body, maybe a university, industry trade association, whatever it may be. But with these white papers and case studies, you have a chance to really dig deep and demonstrate your expertise in a powerful way. And then, of course, we have association, right? You are who you associate with. You guys have all heard the phrase, birds of a feather flock together. This is important because if you're involved with certain organizations or certain people that are already high profile and trusted, then some degree of that authority and that trust is then conferred onto you. So this might be certain mastermind groups. This may be certain trade organizations. This might be universities. This might be prominent entrepreneurs or other people in your industry in some capacity. But that association carries a tremendous amount of weight. This is something we did with one of our clients a while back, where we have worked with them for probably, 6 years, 7 years, something like that. And when we first started working with this particular client, he was an absolute genius. Everybody in his industry, for the most part, knew that. But outside of his circle, other people did not know that. So when we first started working with him, he had zero media presence. We built a ton of publicity, probably at this point, thousands of media features. But along the way, it was like probably 2 years in, we had an opportunity to seat him on a working group with the Florida Department of Education to develop their financial literacy curriculum. And so there was no direct benefit to him purely from creating this curriculum for the Department of Education, but it was that conferred authority status, because they're not going to ask just anyone to help them develop this FinLit curriculum, which is now taught to all Florida students in K through 12 schools. So that association elevated him to an entirely new status. Now, this is somebody I've talked about a few times before, Dr. David Phelps, real estate investor, economic expert. He's super smart, understands this stuff at a very high level, but him having a hand in developing Florida's FinLit curriculum created tremendous authority through association, right? And it was that association with the Florida Department of Education, because there's a high barrier to entry. They're not just going to ask any random person off the street to help them develop this curriculum. So association is incredibly powerful. So those are the three clear signs that tell journalists you're an authority in your industry. So reviews, the content you create, and third-party validation. These are huge. They're going to improve your chances of getting featured in the media dramatically, and it will also help in every other area of your business as well. It will help convert prospects into clients. It will help you to cement in partnership types of deals, create affiliate relationships, all kinds of things like that. It just draws a lot more opportunities to you. So it's not about what you say, it's about what other people say, or it's about what information is out there that validates what you think about your brand. Which leads us into Jeremy's PR PSA for today, which is what you say about your own brand is absolutely meaningless. All that matters is what people can clearly see for themselves. So you can get up on stage, you can post on social media, you can talk to people all day long and explain how great you think you are. But if there's no external validation of those claims, it doesn't mean shit. So you have to do the things that are going to show people that you are, in fact, a legitimate expert, an authority in your industry. And this is how we do it. So I hope you guys found value in that today. If you did, I would love it if you'd pop on over to YouTube, drop a comment. If you think somebody could benefit from this, I would love it if you would share that with them. And by the way, if you are not already subscribed to us on YouTube, when you head over there, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode. Thanks, everyone.